the Badgers. That's it. Just have them play in the Kohl Center. Why don't you? Fools.
They definitely can't have anyone ever play in the Kohl Center. They don't sell alcohol, so they would just lose so much in sales.
That is a tough scene.
But flip side, nothing. It looks like we're gone.
As good as I'm gonna feel. Yeah, I feel great. All right, it is officially March Madness season. The games are just an hour or so from beginning, and that means we've got a lot to cover here. It's a great day. There's no doubt about it. I am Ben Rasa. Who better to break down the first 16 games of this tournament today? And my partner in crime, Matt Gajewski. Sir, we've made it. We saw the play-in games. They did not go well for me, so I'm excited to turn the page and look to the real tournament today. How are you feeling with just an hour left in the bracket before they lock?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm excited that the games are finally here.
Yes.
Playing games, they were okay for me. Had the over in the Bryant game, and there was not a lick of defense there. Notre Dame got it done for me. Didn't love them in that spot, but the line was going to move. So I got it. Was lucky to get it at a very good number early in the week. And we move on with a bunch of games today. A lot of spots I really like and a ton of fun plays for DFS.
Yeah, 4 of 24 from 3 last night. For my Bulldogs, that's not going to get it done. Got a good number on them. It didn't matter, but we've got a ton to get to, and we're going to start things off. Just like with college football, our friends at PrizePicks are powering our college basketball content. They do a great job. If you haven't been over there, today is a great day to do it because they have so many college basketball props, and they run their daily prop-based contests. If you're picking 5-player lineups, you can get up to 10x your entry free. No optimizers, no sharks. It's just a different way to do it. Use the promo code. If you're going over there for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo for a $100 first match deposit bonus. You can download in the App Store. And in addition to that, you're going to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up with the link in the description of this video and make that deposit. You'll receive the email. You'll get set up. It's just an easy way to boost that bankroll. Matt, I want to ask you, we're going to talk about them throughout the show. I want to ask you a couple of guys right off the top, though, if I can, because you do the projections. It's part of our March Madness package, which is still available. You can go get that right before the games if you want the goods for these contests. A guy like Oscar Sheway for Kentucky, his rebounding prop is at 14.5 boards. At first, I was like, well, I have to short this. But his rate is so ridiculous. What do you do when you see guys that aggressive on a site like PrizePicks?
Yeah, with Sheway, he's been underpriced all year, even at those egregious lines. You see 14 and a half, whatever it is on the given week. And there's a lot of sticker shock with it. But with Sheway, he's been averaging 15 and a half per game. We've seen him hit 20 rebounds at times. He's in double digits almost every single week. Today, though, you have the matchup against St. Peter's where there is a lot of blowout risk. The SEC is just way more competitive than anything he's going to face today. So my main risk with him is just limited minutes, which is why I wouldn't take a prop like that. On PrizePicks, I think you can find a lot more competitive spots, especially with some of these teams that aren't as well known.
No doubt. Again, there's 16 matchups, and some of the teams in the first round, of course, are teams we will never see or never talk about again. So do you look, in a general sense, before we dive into the individual matchups, do you look to the 16, the 15, the 14 type seeds for possible props, or do you stick to the guys that you've been projecting all year?
Yeah, so I can project any game, any team, any player, but I like the tighter spreads in round one. A lot of times those are going to be in your 8-9 games, but occasionally you get some seeds that are a little mispriced. And we have Providence taking on South Dakota State. I think 2 teams that are mispriced in the wrong direction. Providence probably a little overseeded, South Dakota State a little underseeded. And that spread is super close. So the line there is going to be within 3 points, depending on your book, but the seed difference is large. You can find a player like Aljami Durham. I'm looking on PrizePicks right now. 13.5 points is a little low for him in a hyper competitive game, the second highest total on the board. And he's a player that's recovering from injury, should have a much higher shot rate than what we've seen recently. He's still battling the sports hernia, but there's no risk of him sitting.
There you go. That's a game we're certainly going to talk about. And there's just opportunities here. Again, we're going to get you covered from every angle. If you've got bracket questions, we've talked about that quite a bit, but we can get them in there. Certainly the DFS side and then the betting side. That's what we're here for. If you're hopping in for the first time, You want to show support for the March Madness crew, just hit that like button. You want to join, press subscribe. You'll be part of the 75,000 person community that we have. But let's go. Eric Lindquist. Yeah, that's right. Go Jackrabbits. That's true. The other two I could do without. Michigan gets us started. They are a 1-point favorite against Colorado State to get things started. 137 total. Dickinson is going to have a big game in my mind. Michigan's point guard is in the concussion protocol. So start with the Wolverines. And what do you see in this game?
They still set up as a pretty strong spot, I think, here. With the line moved, it was Michigan -2.5. Now it's down to a pick 'em, but the advantages Michigan has that they're still going to have regardless of missing their point guard here. It's size. Colorado State is 283rd in effective height. Michigan's third. Rebounding, Colorado State's 311th. Michigan is 117th. They've been using Hunter Dickinson as the engine of their offense down the stretch here, and I don't see any reason why that changes. Now, this game has a pretty decent total, so for DFS purposes, I think Hunter Dickinson's going to be a little contrarian. You also have potentially the chalk of the slate and Frankie Collins, who projects to be the backup point guard. We don't know what the minutes are going to look like. Prior to this injury, Michigan had played one of the tightest rotations in the country, but he just projects as the next man up. And even if he were to see 20 minutes and maybe split this role with Bufkin, that should still be enough at 3,200 to get you there for DFS. Colorado State, they're a little slower, but they also have some matchup advantages. Michigan just doesn't play very good defense. They're 231st in overall defensive efficiency. So I think players like David Roddy are going to be contrarian if you want to play them in tournaments. The total here is just middling, however. So I think the best play overall is going to be Collins because of that price.
It's a virtual pick 'em. You mentioned Collins, obviously, with the situation in that backcourt, he should push for a big uptick in usage and minutes. Do you have a feel in the game itself? You mentioned that the spread has come down, obviously, with Jones not playing. I kind of like the under in the game. I think it's going to be pretty methodical, but I don't really have a strong take on a side.
Yeah, I locked in Michigan early in the week before the news, so I'm sitting on a real bad line here. Just had to eat that. But I actually have the over in the game, but I took it at 139. So I'm sure you like the under at the current number. I was lucky to get that before it moved.
There you go. So again, we got 16 of these bad boys. We can always circle back. You mentioned if you're last thing I like to ask you this for college football too. I assume if you were playing cash, Collins has to be in there.
Yes, I'm playing cash and Collins is in there.
Done. Maybe the game of the day in my mind, South Dakota State and Providence. Providence is a 2-point favorite, a better total here, 147.5. I kind of lean over on this total. I think this could be up and down. I've said this a lot. The Jackrabbits are the #1 3-point shooting team in the country, 44%. They've got multiple guys that can shoot it, but they play in the Summit and they have not been tested in months. They ran through that conference undefeated. Providence will test them. So when you get something like this, how do you approach it? Because the level of competition really increases. And then Providence, they win a lot of close games, but clearly they're playing against, week in, week out stronger than what South Dakota State sees.
Yeah, they lose a lot of good games too. Like they lost to Virginia pretty badly too. They have losses to Marquette. That's not ideal, with the most recent loss to Creighton, which was a complete blowout. But South Dakota State isn't like Vermont or some of these teams. They've played decent squads. This South Dakota State team hung 88 on Alabama, 76 on Washington. Washington State, they hung 74. Those are pretty decent Power 5 schools, especially Alabama hanging 88 on them is impressive. Now, Providence doesn't have the best 3-point defense. They don't defend guards that well. So it's kind of a tough matchup for them against South Dakota State here. Both teams awesome in transition, so we're expecting a lot of points overall. And in the betting markets, I do think South Dakota State's still a strong value here. If you're betting the money line or you're taking the points, I like both of those. For brackets, things like that, I do think they're a little bit overvalued. They're kind of the chalk upset pick of the slate. And then for DFS, man, you can't get any better than some of the prices on these South Dakota State guys. A common theme across these lineups today, especially in the first round, is you're going to have a lot of studs on teams that are 1 seeds, 2 seeds in blowout spots. And then you're going to have a lot of mid-majors that are underpriced just because they're in those blowouts, but they have the usage leaders. And South Dakota State's one of these teams where you can play some of the underpriced studs. Shireman at 7,600 is pretty laughable. He's one of the best usage players in the country. Douglas Wilson is going to be your pivot right off him at the same price. And Wilson's a guy, he's seen a lot of usage recently. He's always going to be a major foul risk, but I think he's playable in this really good game environment. And then you have really cheap plays here between Easley and Mayo. these players have taken on ascending roles recently, and they played a lot of minutes, and you're just getting a really cheap attachment to a high team total here. And even if you want to look at some of their rates in the last 3 games, Easley is a guy that has basically 10% rates across the board with upside in the assist category. And Mayo has a 15% shot rate last 3. They're both playing over 30 minutes. I love them as value plays.
Yeah, again, you mentioned this team, high octane offense. They don't play any defense, and that could come back to haunt them potentially. If Wilson can stay out of foul trouble, that's going to be key here. I bet South Dakota State pretty early in the week. I caught a better number than 2, just slightly. I think that they can easily dispatch Providence. They're going to have to stay out of foul trouble. They're going to need to make their shots. On the other side of this game, though, what do you think Providence tries to do? Do they just bully them inside? Do they try to slow the tempo? How do you think they approach this dangerous team?
Providence plays slow. They definitely have height advantages. South Dakota State is not a very tall team, and they're 162nd in rebounding. So on the interior, they're going to have advantages. They don't really use their big guys that well. Horkler has been their better big guy. I thought it was going to be Nate Watson, but Nate Watson has just been super soft in the paint this year. Sub 15% rebound rate for a guy his size is pretty laughable. You also have some injuries on Providence to monitor. AJ Reeves is questionable in this spot. His loss would be impactful. And then Al Durham's been playing through a sports hernia through the last month. It has affected his effectiveness, and we've seen him play limited minutes at times. It's the NCAA tournament, so I think you get all heart from Durham, and he probably plays as much as he can, but just a little worried about the effectiveness there. Manai is a guy at a middle price, who's going to play a lot of minutes here just because of the injuries.
We're both on South Dakota State in the betting markets. I agree for brackets. Trendy upset pick, but overvalued considering it still is a 4 versus 13. Next one's an 8-9 though. And Memphis is starting to take some money. They're now up to a 3-point favorite against Boise State, 134-point total. Battle of styles. Boise State really wants to slow the tempo. Memphis wants to play like wild men. They've got crazy talent. What do you make of Memphis? Because they started to show signs of life late. Couldn't get past Houston the second time in the championship or whatnot, but they've shown the talent. How do you approach this team with 2 totally different philosophies?
From a betting perspective, it's a stay away from me. I do
Same.
think there's advantages that Boise has in this game. But when you look at the teams overall, Memphis is playing really well. Bart Torvik, since the month of February, Memphis is the number 2 team in the country. And a lot of that has to do with just Amani Bates left the program. He's actually traveling with the team. So I don't know what the deal is. He had a back injury, but they played really well without him. And you mentioned the strengths of Memphis. They're a defensively sound team. They create a lot of turnovers. They draw a ton of fouls. Luckily, Boise doesn't foul a ton, but they do have some issues with turnovers at times. And I also think the Mountain West is a weaker conference. We saw Wyoming just get absolutely bodied in their play-in game. So the Mountain West is kind of a conference I'm looking to fade long-term. For DFS, it's a really tough spot to get to because the total's middling. Memphis is going to use a 10-man rotation. A player like Lomax could make some sense. He's going to play 30-plus minutes. He's just a wind sprinter, though. Doesn't do a lot when he's on the floor. And for Boise, they use a big 3, but in this spot against Memphis in such a tough matchup, I don't know if you can get to Keygob, just really tough spot for him. Shaver is probably the guy I would get to at 5,800 just because the minutes are consistent, and he's not so rebound reliant going up against that really good Memphis front court.
This is a weird game, and I agree. It's just one game, but Wyoming was so terrible. They had like 25 turnovers against an Indiana team that I don't even like today. So we will see what that does. Memphis, again, you mentioned the length. You mentioned their ability to cause problems defensively. But the tempo for me, Boise State 307th per KenPom, Memphis in the top 50. So contrasting styles. On the DFS side, I think you summed it up. Nothing that I see where you really need to get there. And it's just not the best total. Kind of a stay away, interesting matchup. I'm not going to get too deep into the brackets. Do you think either the winner of this can challenge Gonzaga?
No.
Okay. I don't think so either. The first potential beatdown of the slate is the 16 versus the 1, Norfolk State and Baylor. Baylor's a 20.5-point favorite, 136.5-point total. So here we go. You alluded to this earlier in the show already, blowout risk. Can you go to anyone on a 16 seed, or is it just such an unnecessary risk with 16 games?
Yeah, you definitely can. They're just more tournament plays. So I'm thinking about turnovers already, getting ahead of myself. But for a team like Baylor, if Norfolk State just happens to keep this closer than the 20.5 point spread indicates, both these teams are super up tempo. And if you get into a firefight, you have really cheap options on the other side for game stacks. Now, with Baylor, they play a tight rotation of minutes because Cryer's injured. Flagler coming back from injury himself. He's played at least 36 minutes in 3 straight, so I don't think there's any risk of him. It's just with the volatility here, if they do play limited minutes, you're probably buried in a tournament outside of just an outlier performance from one of the studs. Akinjo's too expensive for me in this spot. Flagler's shooting a ton, just not hitting a lot of those shots. Sochan is a little expensive for his presence in the front court too. He's going to come off the bench as the 6th man. Spell Flo Thamba out there. So Baylor's not a spot I love, but all those players are GPP worthy if you're running a lot of lineups. And we usually don't get 150 builds for college basketball, but they are available today. So if you're running 150, I would include them.
And in some potential game stacks, even with it being a 16 versus 1?
Yeah. So a common theme in these 16 versus 1 matchups, and really just in the first round altogether. So you have these mid majors. And a lot of times they have 1 or 2 just absolute usage monsters. And sometimes they're overpriced. Sometimes they're priced at 5,300 like Joe Bryan is today. Joe Bryan plays every single minute. He has a massive usage rate, 24% shot rate last 3, 20% assist rate, also rebounds at a good clip. Norfolk State's not going to bench their studs like this. Even if they're getting blown out, this is their last game of the year. Joe Bryant's going to be on the floor for every minute. And if you do get a competitive game, there's a chance that Joe Bryant absolutely breaks the slate. I remember last year you had Michigan against Texas Southern, I think in round 1. Texas Southern kept it closer than people thought. And they were priced in this range where you could get 2 or 3 guys 5K or below. And 3 of them ended up optimal in the first round. So that's a spot I think could happen here, especially just with a really cheap usage you're getting from Bryant. Jalen Hawkins is another guy playing every single minute, 22% shot rate last 3, 14 and 15% rebound rate and assist rate. I'm playing Bryant in cash, and I think Hawkins and Bryant are both viable here.
Any feel on the game itself? Obviously, I think we all expect Baylor to win. I'm not going to lay these points. I'm also not looking to take the points either. It's just a stay away from me.
Same.
Okay, fair enough. All right, 4 down. I do want to say there is still time. We've got an hour. If you are saying, you know what, I like this, I haven't built my bracket, or you know what, I'm going to hop in these DFS contests, I'm making some bets. You can still sign up for our March Madness package. It's in the description. You just click right there. It is fantastic. Matt and the team have done a great job. His projections, all the usage, our betting picks are available within this package. You also get into Discord, just an awesome community. If you have any questions as the tournament rolls on, we will be there, whether it's Survivor or bracket. So no doubt about it. Get in that package, join the community. And in the meantime, listen to me talk about Longwood, baby, the Lancers. They are in the tournament from Farmville, Virginia, which seems like a create a city, but nevertheless, they take on Tennessee, 18-point dogs, 132.5 point total. Do you take the same philosophy with Longwood that you do with potentially Norfolk, or is this a different type of animal that they're going to be running into with Tennessee's defense?
The only thing that's different here is price. You have 2 usage monsters for Longwood in Wilkins and Hill, but they're at 7K and 6.8K. I'd rather play 5.3 for Bryant on Norfolk. Not a spot where I'm going to be laying the points with Tennessee. I think maybe there's some slight interest in towards the over because both these teams play with decent pace and they're pretty good on offense. Like Longwood is 44th in offensive efficiency in the country. Now take that with a grain of salt. We don't really have Longwood facing the best competition overall. I broke down their schedule to try to see, who did they face. They were the number 1 seed in their conference, but they lost to Iowa, got absolutely slaughtered. Lost by 8 points to Georgetown, 1 point to Old Dominion. Their only quality win outside of conference was against UMBC, who played Vermont in their conference championship and lost by 30 points. So definitely a stay away, not playing anyone on Longwood because of prices. Tennessee is playing small right now, and I think you could see them do the same thing here. They're using Josiah Jordan-James, who's 6'6", as one of their main front court players, and they're using Ziegler to handle the ball. Ziegler's still a little too cheap based on his minutes of late. He dealt with some foul trouble in their second most recent game, but averaging 30 outside of that. So Ziegler, I think at 5,400 could be somebody you use. Vescovi, Chandler, and Josiah Jordan-James are similar to the Baylor guys, where if they do see full minutes in tournaments, that's going to be really useful. They're not going to be owned at all.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Tennessee backcourt to me is interesting because Kennedy Chandler is a guy that I looked at. I looked at his assist prop pretty hard, over 3.5. You were telling me before the show a little bit, they have changed up kind of, with Ziegler and whatnot. Do you see anything here that's cash viable for Tennessee, or is this just another team as a big time favorite? Maybe you get to a sprinkle in a tournament here or there.
I would not play in cash.
Okay. And you're not betting this, you said, right?
Nope.
No, me neither. Feels about right. I don't think Longwood has a great shot. They probably get blown out, and it's probably around 18 points. Okay. What can I say? This could be amongst the better or best games of the day. Richmond Spiders, the A-10 champs, the 12 seed, taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes, the Big Ten champs. 150.5 point total. Richmond's 10.5 point dogs. So let's just start with Richmond, because this is a team that clearly I don't think anyone really expected them to get in the tournament for obvious reasons. They're a balanced team. They've got a lot of different guys. How do you think they attack Iowa? Do you think they run with them? What do you see here, and what does that translate to the DFS side?
Yeah, the total's really high in the game. Iowa just paces up all their opponents, and they suck on defense. So you have really good matchups for all the Richmond players. Richmond's a veteran team. We can say that. All their players are like 26 years old. They've been in college since I was in college. So Gilliard, I think, is interesting in a contrarian spot, perhaps. I don't think he should be. Their team total 70 as double-digit underdogs. But Gilliard's played 40 minutes every single minute in 7 straight games. There's a 32% assist rate, 30% shot rate. He's not going to be played. So you could get to Gilliard, I think. Tyler Burton and Grant Golden, they play a lot of minutes as well. But so much of that usage goes to Gilliard. I think if you're playing a Richmond player, you just go all the way up. I think there's a chance that Andre Gustafson is played a little bit here. He's 4,300, but he just doesn't do anything when he's on the floor. His usage rate is sub 10%, which is just horrific. And Iowa's a really easy team to break down for DFS. You either play Keegan Murray or you move on.
No Bohannon for you?
No, I don't play anybody on Iowa outside of Murray.
When you look to yourself, constructing today, how important it is to pay north of 10 for him? Like, is that a build that's easily done with guys like Callens giving you immediate salary relief? Or do you say that's a big opportunity cost? And even though Murray is unbelievable and he could have a huge game, the rest of my lineup suffers too much.
No, I think Murray is a must in cash today because we have the value. We talked about 3 guys that are elite value plays right now, the 2 on South Dakota State and Collins for Michigan. So Murray's very easy to get. The main questions with him on normal slates are, do you play him or Sheway? Sheway's in a blowout today. And then the only risk that Murray has is his coach is a moron. If he gets 2 fouls early in the first half, he's going to get benched for the entire half. So luckily, Murray historically does not have a high foul rate, but Fran McCaffrey is an idiot. And if he gets in foul trouble, you're toast.
Are you playing his McCaffrey who will be on the floor at all, 4,800?
Yeah, one thing we can say about Iowa is they have the best nepotism in the country.
This is confirmed. Any chance, I don't think you're on this, but do you think that Richmond is live to win this game?
No. Richmond finished 6th in their conference. They upset a bunch of teams to get here, and it's a shame that Dayton didn't get in over them. Dayton would actually be live in this game, so no, I don't think Richmond has a chance.
I do think, though, I lean to taking the points here. Iowa is a weird team, and I know I'm kind of splitting hairs or kind of hedging my bets. Iowa destroys teams, but they also sleepwalk through a lot of games, and they're a lot closer than they should. And say what you want about Richmond, they keep it close all the time. I have a feeling this is just going to be a weird game where it floats, where they're teetering on the verge of getting blown out, and they never actually do. I don't have a feel on the total. Last question. We've kind of talked around this. Are you looking to game stack this at all? Or is it just such high concentration of usage, particularly with Murray? It's not a good game stack because he's just the guy you want.
Iowa runs a nasty rotation. It's like 10 guys. Murray has most of the usage. One of these players probably catches fire, but you have a 1 in 9 chance of hitting it. Like Tony Perkins has had big games, Bohannon, the McCaffreys, Toussaint at times. I'm just not going to roll the dice with one of these guys. It's highly unpredictable. With Richmond, I think you can a little more. The usage goes to 3 players in Gilliard, Burton, and Golden. My preference is Gilliard. Just I think the price you pay for him is worth the usage, whereas Burton and Golden are going to seed enough where I would rather just make the jump to get to Gilliard, but all 3 are viable.
There you go. Keep an eye on this game today. I think it could be sneaky. And yes, let's see if we can get the likes up for the A-10 Spiders, baby. I know no one's an A-10 fan here except me, being a UMass alum, but They got to represent the conference, particularly if Davidson goes down. Are you rooting for Iowa? I know that doesn't matter for what we're talking about. Are you an Iowa guy?
I hate their coaching style in football and basketball. I bet them. I got them at -9, luckily, but
everyone who watches us Saturday mornings knows how I feel about Tyler Linderbaum and the Fighting Hawkeyes or whatever they do.
They have the same coach for basketball that they do in football.
Yeah, Kirk comes on the sidelines. Why not?
An old guy that hires all his buddies and his kids, and they play inefficient like World War II basketball and football.
No respect, but deadly accurate. That's what we're gonna get. I hope Richmond punishes them for just that. Now, the first super sacrificial lamb of the slate is upon us. That would be Georgia State. It's not even that much though. 22.5 point dogs to the Zags, 148.5 point total. What is this line telling you? Is it that Georgia State is good enough to make it respectable, or that Gonzaga is just not going to stretch their legs here? I mean, if they wanted, I assume they could name their score, or do you think this is a strong 16 seed that we have to talk about?
Strong in the sense that they're underrated. I think if they'd been healthy all year, you'd probably get them as like a 14. Maybe a little higher either. I think they would be kind of in like the South Dakota State range, but they were not healthy to begin the year. And they actually dealt with a lot of injuries throughout the year too. So they kind of take a tough draw here, face Gonzaga. Again, in a better matchup, I think they'd be live to maybe have an upset here, but Gonzaga is just way too good. I took the points with Georgia State just because they're a solid team overall. Their offense, I think, will be improved based on what we've seen this year. I mean, they're 245th in offensive efficiency. They played solid defense. They just have trouble scoring. The issue is like Gonzaga just matches up so well with really all but maybe 2 or 3 teams in the country. This lower level competition, Georgia State, I don't think is live to win the game, but they can score well enough to maybe keep this closer than the 23 indicates.
On the DFS side, again, I'm going to kind of relate them all to Norfolk State because they were the first one we talked about. Is it more Longwood where you said, these guys are priced up a little more, or is it more Norfolk State where you say, okay, if this hangs in and it's an 18, a 16, a 12-point game, these guys are not coming off the floor and they could be actually very effective values.
Yeah, the Longwood totals at 132, 133, the Norfolk's at 137. This is 149. So it has a much higher total. Georgia State just implied for more raw points to begin with. And then same thing with Longwood and Norfolk State. If they keep it close, you have a really good chance here in a high total and up-tempo environment to get some points. The prices aren't great, but you have a usage monster in Corey Allen, 26% shot rate last 3, 34% assist rate. I think he's tournament viable, but he's just a little expensive for this team total right now. On Gonzaga, you run the same risk with Chat and Timmy that you're going to get with like Vescovi and Kinjo and some of the other studs on these teams that are in blowouts. I would rather play Timmy than Chat just because of price. But luckily, we have a large sample of Gonzaga in blowouts. They play in a horrific conference. So every other game they play is a nasty blowout. We kind of know what they're going to do. And Anton Watson is going to play 20, 25 minutes in this contest. He's 4K. He's a great rebounder. And if the shot rate increases in a blowout, I think at 4K flat, he's somebody you could use for tournaments.
I wanted to ask you about that. So like, is there a quote unquote blowout risk? So we know it affects the starters, but do you ever look to guys that aren't really in the rotation or peripheral minutes and say, okay, if it gets out of hand, they could see a bump? Or is it more, I'm not going to attack the premium price guys on these teams because of the risk?
Usually it's, I'm not going to attack the premium price guys unless we know for a fact that they're going to use like a couple guys. Gonzaga's really weird in their blowouts. They'll like Anton Watson's their 6-man. So he plays a decent amount to begin with. He spells Chet and Timmy a decent amount here. And then they use Hickman and Salas, but those guys play significantly less than Watson for whatever reason. He just has a more consistent role in some of these spots. So with the larger sample, knowing what Gonzaga does in blowouts, I think it can give you some confidence in a guy like Watson. Whereas, I don't know, let's use like Baylor, for example. They've only been in a couple all year, and I'm not sure where the minutes go if they do get into a blowout.
Looking at PrizePicks, all these guys are priced, in the teens there. They don't have a true alpha. It looks like a pretty, liberal spread of points from Holmgren to Timmy to Bolton to Nembhard. Anything you want to attack there? Is it kind of what you said where everyone's going to get theirs, but you don't see it getting, one guy limiting the ceilings?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to make choices. So we talked about one stud we really like in Shireman, who's in an extremely competitive environment, really up-tempo, high total, and he doesn't have these risks. I mean, there's a really outside chance that maybe he gets in foul trouble, but there's a pretty decent shot this is a blowout. So unless you're playing large field tournaments running 150, I'm probably staying away from the Zags outside of Watson.
We had a question from chat from WS. Best value on this slate for DraftKings, would it be Collins from Michigan, or are there guys that we have yet to talk about?
It's Collins.
Okay, there you go. That is just a situation, just like in the NBA, when you get a guy ruled out like that after salaries drop, there's just nothing that you can do to create that production. All right, we're almost halfway home, making perfect time. We've got it under control. Marquette and North Carolina. My most important bet is in this game. I hit North Carolina pretty damn hard at 3. It's come up a little bit. I still kind of like it, but you want to get the best number. I believe you also bet them, correct?
Yeah, one of the first bets I made, also got it at 3. It's been flip-flopping between 3.5 and 4 throughout the week. So I'm still comfortable with that at that number too. I think it's fine.
Me too. Really need them today. Marquette is their opponent, 151.5. Marquette, you go to those games. Talk to me about this team, the Fighting Shaka Smarts. What do you see with Lewis and co? Are their priorities? How do you think this game goes?
Yeah, Lewis is by far their best player for DFS. It's not really close. And I honestly don't think anyone else is usable for Marquette. He'll be contrarian for the reasons we mentioned. There's just really good studs on the slate with Keegan and Shireman. And we haven't even talked about, like a Sheway or a Baycott on the other side, which we'll get to. So Marquette's pretty easy. From a betting perspective, Marquette's a team that doesn't have a lot of size. They're 111th in effective height. North Carolina's 24th. Massive advantage, North Carolina. Marquette's 178th in rebounding. North Carolina's 13th. Massive advantage, North Carolina. You look at turnovers. Well, Marquette's defense forces a lot of turnovers. They're kind of known for that havoc creating style of play. North Carolina doesn't turn the ball over a lot. So it's a really tough situation here for Marquette to begin with. Now you just have the massive advantage with Baycott. If he doesn't foul in this game, to quote the great Steve Boyton in the chat, Baycott legit has 20 upside. He said that on his stream earlier this morning. I 100% agree with him. The guy's an absolute monster. He already averages 12.5 rebounds per game, and he's only been seeing increasing usage. Remember, this team had Dawson Garcia to start the year, so Baycott did not have the consistent minutes he does now. If you were to, I don't have the splits in front of me, but first half rebound rate versus second half rebound rate, Baycott might be in the Oscar Sheway territory of rebounds per game. He's an absolute stud, and he's not expensive enough.
So he is in that territory. There's no doubt about it. And even going to PrizePicks, it's reflected there over under 13.5 boards. And I think that's warranted. My biggest concern, though, you mentioned Garcia. If he gets in foul trouble, UNC has no bodies behind them in this front court. They run a real thin rotation. And I am worried about that. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds of what some of these coaches are going to do. But do you think they will let him, if he picks up 2 in the first 6 minutes, is he sitting there for 14 minutes? Or do you think there's a chance he plays with 2 throughout the first half?
They just don't have any other guys.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
I think he probably sits for a little bit, because they have Manic. But I mean, like they really don't have any other players in their front court.
That's
Leaky
my biggest
Black
concern.
is like a winger. Like, I don't know who else has size for this team. I honestly think Baycott has
McCoy, they don't have bodies.
Right. Like Baycott's been in foul trouble before this year. He actually fouled out of their last game, but he did play 36 minutes in it. I think unless it's too really early in the first half, Baycott's on the floor.
Do you think that Baycott is in cash consideration, or are you really going Murray or Baycott?
I'm playing them both.
You're playing them both, so you can find enough there?
I think so. Steve brings up a good point in the chat with Collins, because we don't know for a fact that he's starting. But I think it's a very easy pivot. Nobody who could potentially enter the starting lineup is expensive here. Like, Collins is the flat out most expensive guy that could potentially start. You literally have Dickinson, Jones, Brooks, Diabate, and Houston. Those are the expensive guys. Obviously, Jones is out. The next most expensive player is Collins at 3,200. So I think your pivot's easy, and you probably just play who starts for Michigan. So if those of you have that question, that's probably how I would approach it.
Yeah, this is, again, I think this is a good game. I think North Carolina is gonna look good and kind of convincingly expose them, particularly in that front court. I bet them. It's part, again, if you're looking for picks, if you're looking for bets, get in our Discord. We had a flash sale last night. You can get in there for $1 and get those picks. No better deal than that. So stay tuned for a lot of fun things that we're doing over on the Odd Shopper channel. And if you've got questions, you go to that awesemo.com/join. You can get right in there. Baycock's a stud. There's no doubt. Is there anyone else in this game, though, that you're really looking to get over on?
Yeah, so I kind of got lost on my Baycott love, but the total's great here. It's 152.5. UNC is a 78 implied team total. Caleb Love's going to play a ton, 22% shot rate, 30.5% assist rate. He's a great pivot. Brady Manik's a guy who's played really well lately. Now the minutes have gone down a bit here for Manik, but 21% shot rate, 17% rebound rate, 15% assist rate. He's certainly Baycott light. I would rather get up and play Baycott, but if you absolutely cannot find the salary, I'm okay with Love and Manik. RJ Davis plays a ton of minutes too. He's mainly a shooter, but he's actually been a little more involved peripherally in their last three. So 6,700. He's probably the last guy I would play. Leaky Black is your pure definition of a wind sprinter. He's got great cardio, but he's not very good at basketball.
Yeah, there's a lot of those guys in this first round. So this is one, again, I think UNC is the spot to go. You've kind of said that as well. All right, before we flip the page to the second set of 8, we had a couple questions from chat. G-Sauce had an interesting one. What do you consider like the area for blowout risk in some of these games? Because to me, and maybe I'm wrong, if Gonzaga comes in around this spread, they win by 22, 20. I don't think that the minutes will be impacted differently than what we've seen all year. It would have to be massive in my mind. Do you see something different? Like, what do you consider a bump down to the projections in terms of a score differential?
Yeah, double digits for sure. I mean, these teams, if you're winning, you're going to play 2 days from now. So you want fresh legs for sure, especially if you're like Gonzaga playing a cupcake here and you're going to be facing the winner of Boise, Memphis. Not great opponents, but definitely a step up. And this is going to be different for every team. Like in a blowout loss, I highly doubt teams like Georgia State just take their foot off the gas entirely. Like these kids want to play at the end of the day. But ultimately, like think about Gonzaga's spread as a range of outcomes. If 23 is, your median here, there's a lot of outcomes where they're winning by like 30 points, like 25 to 30 points. They're definitely not playing their starters in those outcomes. So you need a pretty severe outlier away from the spread, like closer to Georgia State, for them to play competitive minutes. It's just a tough spot to get to.
Yeah, well said. That's all it is a range of outcomes and seeing kind of, okay, if you get that, how lucrative is the ceiling for those guys? All right, here we go. This is a sneaky game. It's another 5-12. You always see these teams get knocked off. New Mexico State and UConn. This is a competitive. It's around 6.5. I've seen it this morning. Talk to me about this team. I've seen New Mexico State play quite a bit out of the whack. UConn and their insane coach. DFS relevant, 132.5 point total.
I love that you're just like, yeah, I've watched a lot of
I love this team. I watched them in Seattle all year, then Abilene Christian. New Mexico State knows what they're doing, and they've got some dudes. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Teddy Allen, who is a player. He's going to have a game today, but is he relevant in DFS?
I mean, they play some decent. 9 Davidson's in this tournament. They beat Washington State, a team. I mean, Washington State, they're just the kings of losing single digit games. I think Washington State could be in this tournament if they had just been on the right side of a couple of those single digit games. It was unbelievable how many they lost, but New Mexico State rolled through their conference. They're here against UConn. UConn's a really strong team overall. So it's kind of just a tough draw for them. I don't think they match up particularly well against UConn. UConn's great at rebounding. They're good on the interior, even despite, like not having the biggest lineup in the world. And they're playing really well lately. So it's a tough spot, in my opinion, for this New Mexico State team, especially considering the size that UConn possesses through Adama Sanogo. For DFS purposes, the total is not great. New Mexico State has a low implied team total below 63. It's a slower game environment, and it's a defensively sound game environment. Teddy Allen's a monster. The only thing stopping him is fouls. In the most recent game, he did foul out in 23 minutes, but he played 40 and 39 minutes in the 2 games prior. He's above 17% shot rate, rebound rate, and assist rate, and that assist rate is at 31% last 3 games. Just a monster usage player. The problem is the total is really low. So are you going to play like Teddy Allen and another mid-range guy, or are you going to punt and play Keegan Murray is kind of how I'm looking at the 2v2s here. In 150, you definitely play some of him, but in one lineup, a couple lineups, I didn't get much. Sanogo's kind of the same issue. Sanogo's great. He has a decent chance of fouling in the game, which is a concern, but a 24.5% shot rate, 28.5% rebound rate last three. The offense flows through him. Inefficiencies aside, he's going to just have so much usage that in contrarian tournament builds, Sanogo, I think, is in play.
Yeah, so I guess, my question again, is it more when you get into the Sanogo range, are you looking to find the extra money for Baycock and Murray, or are you saying, okay, you know what, it's a different, consideration at that point? Because he's starting to teeter where if you have a little extra funds, you can go get one of those premier pay-ups.
Yeah, I'm flat out just playing Shireman over anyone in this range because the total in that game is so good and Shireman's usage is better than Sanogo's.
That's right. Jackrabbits. That's what we do. Talk to me about RJ Cole a little bit in the backcourt. Do you see anything there, or is it just that same concept that, upper sixes right at flat 7, basically, where there's so many options that he just doesn't stand out?
I'm glad you brought him up. I was just going to blow past him and I shouldn't. He's a pretty good buy low here. You've seen Tyrese Martin handle monster usage recently. It hasn't always been that way. RJ Cole, he has the better usage rate and pretty significantly above Tyrese Martin on the year. RJ Cole is a little shot dependent, but he does have a pretty decent assist rate too. So I think the floor is better than people might think. For tournaments, if you're in that range, and I think this is an excellent build for tournaments, I think, the chalk build is actually going to be pretty owned today with guys like Shireman, Baycott, and Keegan Murray. If you pivot off one of those guys, even just one of them, and play a guy like RJ Cole, I think it could differentiate you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of options there. No doubt about it. Friend of the show and Awesemo member for 11 months. Look at that badge. Ghetto Farmer Boy said, crushed it last year, fellas. Let's do it again. Good luck to you as well. We had some subscriptions are rolling in. Noah Moon, RC Vidal, welcome to the team. We love to see it. We love to see that going. Frankie Collins starting for Mr. Boynton in chat. That is good stuff. So I assume that just solidifies what we talked about at the beginning with Michigan.
That's right.
That's right. Bet in this game?
This game, so Michigan or the UConn?
No, New Mexico State.
Okay, sorry, not to go back there. Yeah, I have the over. Bad number.
Okay. I lean to the Aggies. I think this could be close, but I don't know. I'm not sure I need to force it. 16 of these. Yeah. The number's not there. I might try to get in live. I'll say this. I think this doesn't get out of hand. So if UConn goes up early, I will hit New Mexico State if it flirts with 10 or anything like that. And pending they look good because of Mr. Allen. All right. It's time of the show. What have I been waiting for? The Peacocks, baby. St. Peter's Peacocks, the team of destiny. Now that Bryant's been eliminated, sadly, they draw Kentucky, 18-point underdogs, 132.5 point total. So very similar. You told me something very interesting on our bracket show over on the OddsChecker YouTube channel. You told me that St. Peter's defensive metrics for a 15 seed are one of the strongest that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
what does
really
that mean?
All time.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, they're pesky. Peacocks are a weird animal. You don't want to be messing around with that. What does that mean, though, from the DFS side? A, with Kentucky, and then B, can St. Peter's produce any offense in this spot?
I highly doubt it. They're 269th in offensive efficiency. And I mean, they have a great defense, but we always need to consider level of competition. They play in a really weak conference. Their only notable opponents this year were VCU. They lost by 3. St. John's, they lost by 21. Providence, they lost by 14. So any stop up in competition, this team has struggled mightily. I will say they did score some decent numbers against some of these better teams, like 71 against Providence, 70 against St. John's. Those aren't bad for a mid-major team in St. Peter's. And I know you and I have bet this team a decent amount in their conference play. I don't know if I bet a mid-major more than St. Peter's, to be honest with you. But for DFS purposes, I don't think there's a ton to really look at here. Their rotation's a little wider than some of the other teams we talked about, like Norfolk. And then on the Kentucky side, you're running the same risks with Baylor, Gonzaga. I will say fading Oscar Sheway might be the scariest thing on this slate, because even if he plays 20 minutes, we've seen him double-double plenty of times this year in a half. He has a near 40% rebound rate on the year. I mean, Sheway is probably the scariest fade on the slate, I think.
I mean, he's a walking double-double. Furthermore, does that just mitigate, does that just wipe away any potential plays on St. Peter's side, particularly in the front court? Do you just worry that they're just manhandled down there?
Yeah. I do think they probably just get manhandled down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough scene in that regard. Anything like, former Davidson player and Grady, who's got to get the shot going, Wheeler, Ty, or do you just look to Sheway? And I want to ask you particularly about Sheway. It seems like Murray is where you'd go if you had the money. Is that wrong?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So does that, obviously you can't play him in cash for that reason. You just kind of have him as a dangerous tournament guy if you don't have him, and certainly slate breaking upside if you do.
I think some people will play him in cash, take the risk. It's just not me. But for tournaments, I think he's excellent. You mentioned Grady. He's not someone I like. I think he actually could lose his role. You're seeing Toppin play decent minutes recently, but Ty is great. Just worry about the risk. Ty was injured at the midpoint of the year. He's now played 32 and 37 minutes back to back. Shot rate up above 21%, assist rate above 20% as well. Severe, he's going to run point. Assist rate really high. Just worried about minutes for all of them.
And you're not betting this, are you?
Negative.
Me neither. I would never bet against the Peacocks, and I'm not going to take those points because it could end poorly today. For the 15 seed, good run by them. All right. The one team that we have seen is Indiana. They mercifully beat Wyoming in a game that they should have just allowed SMU into the bracket after watching that. It was awful. They now draw St. Mary's. St. Mary's is 2.5 point favorite, 126.5 point total. We got to start with Jackson Davis. He's the reason they're here. He was an absolute beast on the inside. I don't think he's going to, maybe he will. St. Mary's isn't exactly the most imposing front court. What do you see with him, and what do you see with Indiana in this now second game for them?
Yeah, I like Indiana. I think they're somewhat live here. St. Mary's interesting team to look at. I don't love the conference they play in. Their biggest weakness is against size. They don't rebound very well. They actually have decent size, but they're 252nd in rebounding, which is pretty egregious. Now, Indiana's not great themselves. They're 92nd, but they've really put it together recently, which is, we talked about this with Memphis. I think you can say the same thing with Indiana. Since the second half of the season has started, they're a team that's gotten much, much better. And a common thing we are seeing with all these West Coast teams is, yeah, they have a lot of quad one wins, but they're beating up on each other, the same teams. Like when they're out of conference, they're not doing very well. Like this St. Mary's team has a loss to Colorado State. They have a loss to Wisconsin, San Diego State, BYU, Santa Clara. Some of those teams are in the conference. Some of them are not. But who are their notable wins out of conference? I mean, you're talking about Texas Southern, Bellarmine. They beat Notre Dame by 3. It's not the best level of competition. So seeing a really up and down St. Mary's team facing a hot Indiana team, not something that I like, especially considering the size disadvantage that St. Mary's has and who's Indiana's best player. Well, it's Trace Jackson Davis, but for DFS, the total is just too low to target.
Yeah. So again, does that render guys like Toss and Kuzi and these guys just pseudo unplayable?
Kuzi has a monster usage rate lately, 40 minutes exactly every single minute in each of the last 3 games, 26% shot rate, 20% rebound rate, 30.5% assist rate. Like, my goodness, it's just the total's 126. So like, you're going to allocate 7.6K. You're going to pay the same price for Kuzi as you would pay for Shireman. It's not going to be me.
It's just a weird, and I don't think we need to dig into this too much, but he's played 40 minutes in 5 of 6. But before that, he was playing, upper 20s, like 30 on the dot. Did they lose a rotation player? Or did they just decide, let's never take this guy off the court?
Yeah, they intelligently made the business decision to play him every minute.
Okay, there you go. That does help naturally when you play. We don't really see that, of course, in the NBA. Like, guys don't play 48 minutes a game. In college, there's going to be a lot of guys today that just simply do not come off the court. I think St. Mary's is going to win the game. I have not bet it. I just think that Indiana is they're such a bad shooting team. Wyoming gave them the game. Say what you want about St. Mary's. I don't see them losing the game. Indiana's going to have to win it. Trace Jackson can do that. I don't know.
I mean, like, for all those losses I talked about, this team beat Gonzaga, who is the best big man in the country. Like, maybe Arizona has the best big men in the country, but Gonzaga is right up there. And I mean, you talk about stopping elite big men. Trace Jackson Davis is one of them. So they've done it before. They haven't done it consistently, but if they can find that magic again, you could definitely see an upset. I will say I like Indiana in the game, but it's got to be the right number.
Any interest in Geronimo, who had a huge game against Wyoming, 3,800? Is he salary relief, or is that just kind of chasing what was the play-in game?
Yeah, so Trey Galloway fouled out in 19 minutes. Excuse me, 12 minutes. Wow. Horrific. That guy is usually on the floor more than Geronimo.
There you go. Anything else?
I don't think so. Indiana's rotation's pretty nasty.
Creighton and San Diego State, the old 121 total. And I think that's too high, to be honest. Aztecs 2-point favorite, another 8-9. These are toss-up games. Very, very difficult. It's also difficult for me, at least, to kind of get an order of what Creighton wants to do. They've got a lot of guys. They've got some bigs that can shoot. Hawkins in particular can stretch. O'Connell, are these guys just too pricey considering how methodical and how good San Diego State's defense is?
Yeah, it's an X-out game for me for DFS.
The entire game.
Yeah. We could talk about betting, but I mean, you mentioned it. Who do we play that we like at their prices where we're not just taking on immense opportunity cost? The only player, Matt Bradley, maybe. He's so used, but I mean, 7,200, he's again right in that Shireman range. I think I would honestly rather pay a little bit less for a guy like RJ Cole and just be very contrarian in a much better matchup. But if you did play Bradley, I think I could see it. The argument's at least there. His usage is very high. He's above 20% in each of the main statistical categories. So that's there. But otherwise, it's probably Kaluma on the other side, just the cheapest guy who's going to play upwards of 35 minutes plus and has good rates across the board. But even then, you're taking a good floor, but what's your ceiling in this low game environment?
How do you see a game like this playing out?
I actually bet Creighton. And again, I kind of have a macro fade on this Mountain West Conference. But to dive into the stylistics, just to give you a reason why, it's another spot where Creighton has massive size advantages. Now, they lost Nemhard. That's going to be tough against the #1 defensive efficiency team in the country, but they've been able to mask that against really good opponents so far. So it's not the biggest worry in my mind. And where I do worry with San Diego State is their size. They're 144th in rebounding, Creighton's 33rd. In overall effective height, San Diego State's 118th, Creighton's 27th. You look at even just free throws. This is a very close game. San Diego State's outside the top 250, in free throw percentage. Creighton's pretty solid in that regard. So it's tough. I don't know how this game plays out because it's so volatile with such a low total. And that's kind of how San Diego State's gotten there through this volatile play. But Creighton definitely has some advantages. And if you can get them as a dog, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to push back on that. I will say them losing their point guard for the year did them no favors. But in a game like this, it's a high variance game. There's not going to be that many possessions. That's how San Diego State wants it. To me, 1st to 60 wins. You score 60 points, you're going to win this game. I don't know if either team will get there. I like the under.
It's just a horrific game to watch. Please, if you're unless you're a Creighton or a San Diego State fan, just turn on something else.
I love that. Give me a barn burner where if you make a basket, it could be the winning basket, even if we're in the first half, because it's just that disturbing. How many Four Locos you looking to get today? You gonna kick back on Grandpa's old cough medicine after this or what?
I have one on my counter. I wasn't planning on drinking it, but it's over there.
It's there in case of emergency.
I went to the gas station and I saw a new USA flavor. I never had it before, but anytime I see a new flavor, you got to at least
#America. Tastes like freedom, I assume. Anyway, all right, here we go. Vermont, Arkansas. I don't know. The Catamounts, they're going to be an interesting discussion today. 139-point total. Arkansas is the rightful favorite. So Vermont is one of the many teams that you've already talked about destroying teams. But who are they really playing? UMBC and Binghamton and schools that are by me that aren't really good at basketball. Obviously, they don't see JT Note and these guys on a regular basis, but they're a disciplined quality team. Ryan Davis can play. These guys on the inside. But how do you see a matchup going where they're getting such a step up in competition?
You're going to hear a lot of mainstream media talk about Vermont, talk about the tight spread in the game, talk about how they beat every team in their conference tournament by 30 plus points. They will conveniently leave out that, okay, who's their best win? Because I think it's Colgate.
Yeah, I mean, Colgate's a legitimate team. They did not win this game. I saw Vermont early in the year play some teams. Like I saw them play Providence, watched that entire game. I saw them play Oakland. 10. Saw them play Oakland. They played them tough.
They lost by 2, and Oakland's a good team, but they're not.
They played Arkansas. A Big Ten team early in the year too. I don't have it
Maryland.
In front of
they
me.
Lost by 11.
Okay. Well, yeah. They got no quality
like Maryland's
wins.
not a good Big Ten team either. Like losing by 11 to Maryland is much different than being a 5-point underdog to Arkansas. I'm going to bet this game. I'm waiting right until tip because for whatever reason, it continues to fluctuate back and forth between Arkansas and Vermont here, but I want the best number. But man, I explain something to me that I'm not seeing. Like, how is this a 5-point spread?
I mean, do you think there's anything, because we kind of saw this and ultimately where did it end up? I think that'll be your counterpoint. We saw Colgate in this spot last year against Arkansas as a trendy underdog, and they gave them hell in the beginning, and then Arkansas wore them down.
Yeah, Colgate was the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country. I think another reason why you might like South Dakota State. Yes. Vermont's pretty good on offense, but they do a lot in the interior, and that is the absolute strength of Arkansas's defense. You're going up against Jalen Williams and Tony and some of these dudes that are big and have length. That's going to be very tough for Vermont here. Rebounding, Vermont trying to score in the paint with some of the small guys they have. They're 339th in height. Like that's not very good. Rebounding, they're 170th. I love the Colgate upset last year. You and I talked that we thought they might keep it close against Arkansas. I definitely didn't think they were going to win, but I mean, I don't see the same stylistic advantages for Vermont here. And we basically only talked about level of competition, but diving into some of the nitty gritty here, I don't think the matchup advantages point their direction either. The biggest advantage they have, and I will say this, Musselman.
I knew you were going to say that.
He's like McCaffrey. If Note fouls, he's hitting the pine. If Jalen Williams fouls, he's hitting the pine. It's the reason they lost in the SEC tournament. No matter who they're playing, what the circumstances are, what's on the line, they're sitting on the bench. And they're going to lose games. They're going to lose in the tournament. I just don't think it's against Vermont.
It's true. I'm not the biggest fan of their coach. Where was he? Nevada? Utah State?
He should be at some high school. I mean,
he used to be at one of the Mountain West schools. Then he made the move. Now he coaches with a sling. I don't know. This guy is very suspicious. I'm with you.
Like him and Calipari are good recruiters. They're not good coaches.
There is a difference to that. And that's something that is not talked about enough. I tend to agree with you. I think that Arkansas is going to get clipped, maybe by New Mexico State or UConn. Probably not by Vermont. From the DFS side, do you
completely ignored it?
What'd you say? I
said we completely ignored it.
Yeah. What are you going to do? All right. Times are tough, man. What can I say? But what do you do on the DFS side with Arkansas? Because you've talked about how you do think, talent, the advantages on the inside. Does it translate into plays?
Decent total, 139, tight spread. If it plays to the spread, you think most of these guys will get full minutes. Again, the only risk is going to be fouls. Now, Musselman has been a little weird with the rotation lately, and they've basically been playing roulette with the minutes between Devo Davis, Chris Likes, and Trey Wade. Excluding them, I think you can play Amude. I think you can play Tony. And then I think Williams and Note are going to be a little more contrarian. Their minutes have been down lately because of fouls. If both of them are out of foul trouble, they have upside to play like 38 minutes. Tournaments, love it. For a main team, the foul issues are just immense for this team. So it's tough to play on like a cash team, but if you're playing 150, you're running multiple lineups in tournaments, I definitely think you want Arkansas.
All right, 3 games left. Then we're going to turn it over to the brackets. And again, if you're looking for more NBA content, and we still, even though there's one game today, we've got plenty on the channel. We've got the MMA strategy show, the NHL strategy show, and then our full block of NBA content. So while you're watching these games, stay with the boys and the fellas here, breaking it all down for you guys. And of course, again, if you're hopping in, checking us out for the first time, you want to show support, just say thanks, hit the like button. It really helps us out. It means a ton, and we really do appreciate it. All right. San Francisco, one of my favorite teams in the country, the Dons against Murray State. Just terrible luck. I think San Francisco really had a good shot to win this game, and I still think they can win this game, but they have a first team forward who will not be playing now. Besides Michigan's point guard, this to me is huge news. What does that do to the rotation, and how do we react accordingly for the loss?
Right. So Masalski is the guy you're talking about.
Yes.
He's a huge loss in this matchup because San Francisco doesn't play with a lot of size to begin with. Murray State's best player is KJ Williams. He's their 6'10 forward. He's an absolute wagon on the floor, and he's going to be really tough to defend, especially now without Masalski. They're going to try to put a Band-Aid over his absence with 6'9 Patrick Tape. He's definitely a step down in terms of talent, but Tape is also one of these guys that can't keep his hands to himself. He has a very high foul rate, and that's going to be a huge risk against KJ Williams here. So I would normally say Patrick Tape is going to be your auto lock, but because of we have Collins available, we have a couple guys in South Dakota State, Tape is a little bit below them in terms of my value rankings for today's slate, but he's definitely somebody that could play 30, 32 minutes if he doesn't stay in foul trouble. Not a great matchup, but the total in the game is decent at 137. So I do have some interest in Tape. Boyer is their usage alpha. He's at nearly 19% usage, but he plays every single minute. So take that with a grain of salt. 23.5% shot rate, 19% rebound rate, 36% assist rate. That might even go up without Masalski here. And then Khalil Shabazz, he's mainly a shooter, but he has a decent assist rate too. I think those are the three guys you want to play for San Francisco. KJ Williams for Murray State is an outside consideration. He has great usage overall, but he's going to cede a little more usage to guys like Tevin Brown, Justice Hill, the Trey Hannibals of the world, where I think you could just get an edge by paying up to Keegan Murray instead of him. But for tournaments, I think KJ Williams in play too.
Is it possible to go even further down the front court for San Francisco with a guy like Josh Coonan?
I want to say no, but he did play 28 minutes in their last game.
Against Gonzaga.
You look at his rates, his usage is horrific, but I mean, Tapes isn't very good either. So, I mean, for tournaments, sure.
Okay, fair enough. I caught a bet. I mean, it's not even a bad number in my opinion. I bet San Francisco. I didn't realize.
You bet them at the efficient number, and then a guy got ruled out.
Yeah, like what can I do there? So
that's what happened to me with Michigan.
Yeah, I'm stuck with them. I'm going to live with it. Are you looking to bet this game given now that knowing what we know?
I have Murray State. Luckily have them at the good number. I was on the other side of you.
Must be nice. Bullets 4-8. Subscribe to the channel. Yeah, it happens. Nothing you can do about that. Interesting game. I'll just say this real quick. Do you think that either of these teams can beat Kentucky?
No.
Yeah, I don't see it either. Sheway, once again. We'll be talking about that on Saturday, right at this very same time. Akron, UCLA, the Zips, 13.5-point favorite against UCLA, who made the wild run last year, 128 total, so pretty methodical. I don't know a ton about Akron. They're not a team that I've seen a ton, and furthermore, they weren't really expected. I think it's a pretty reasonable thing to say they weren't expected to win the MAC. So here they are. Are they overmatched or are they live? What are we doing with this team?
I don't think they're live. Again, there's a lot of lame ducks that came out of the mid-majors this year. Just a lot of chaos. We talked about Richmond being one of them. Akron's another. Number 4 team in the MAC. They beat Kent State to win the MAC. They didn't even have to face Toledo in that final. They beat them in the semifinal. And they also beat Buffalo in the quarterfinal. And Buffalo's a better team than Akron too. They had 3 straight upsets to get here, which is just ridiculous. But here we are. The Zips play competitive basketball, and it's a better conference than people think. Like, this Zips team debuted against Ohio State this year, and they only lost by 1. They absolutely clobbered Wright State in non-con too. So the conference and the non-con wasn't as bad as people think. With that said, I do believe they're overmatched against UCLA. You look at how UCLA plays, they're not the biggest team in the country. And I think a team that has some size is going to give UCLA problems. Akron's not that. Akron's 220th in rebounding. That's going to be a huge issue for them here, even against a small-ish UCLA team. I'll also highlight that UCLA, the metrics aren't as high on them this year. They've had injuries all throughout the year. Jaime Jaquez dealt with an ankle sprain. You had Johnny Juzang fall off the scooter, hurt his hip, missed multiple games. Even Tiger dealt with a 1-game suspension in there. They're finally all back. They're finally all playing 30-plus minutes a game. I think UCLA is a team we can fade later on against someone that has height, but against Akron, that matchup's just not there.
I tend to agree. I don't really like that. That's going to be carnage in the bracket because I don't think Baylor's any good, and I'm not sure St. Mary's is the team. Maybe Indiana, honestly, could make a crazy run because they could end up matching up. Anything even approaching like cash viable from here? You mentioned Juzang and Jaquez, Cody Riley, anything like that?
Juzang's too cheap. He was at 8K at one point this year, but he's priced as if he's still hurt. Total's really low. So for cash, I think he's kind of on the outside looking in, but I could see it. His shot rate's so high. For Akron, they're another team like Norfolk where their team total is really bad, but they play such tight minutes. Everybody's going to be on the floor for max minutes as long as there's no fouling. So we do have some value. Enrique Freeman, he is your stereotypical big man, can't control his arms, fouls incessantly, but when he doesn't foul, he plays 38 minutes. And we saw that in their last game. He's basically a walking double-double if he's not in foul trouble. Over 30% rebound rate this year. And again, UCLA doesn't have a lot of size. So if he's on the floor, that could be a problem. Ali has played 38, 38, and 36 minutes. Last three, 22.5% shot rate, 21% assist rate. He's their best defender, so he's not coming off the floor. 5K flat for him. I do prefer the value for Norfolk, but I think you could play the Akron value as a contrarian piece. I think they're going to come in under-owned.
But too low in terms of a total to game stack?
Probably overall. It's 10 points lower in the total compared to the Baylor-Norfolk game.
Correct. There you go. All right. The final game. Another team. I mentioned Indiana. The other team, mercifully, that we already saw. Don't even get me started on that game. Texas Southern beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi, but there were no winners, including the people who watched that, like me. They play Kansas. Normally, the announcers pretend, and they were just like, well, this is just going to be a disaster. And it is, because Kansas is a 21.5-point favorite. Texas Southern turns the ball over incessantly. I think this is too light. I'm actually going to end up betting Kansas. I don't get this. Do we want to do anything from Texas Southern? Do you think that there are plays that we need to look at?
I don't think so. Their rotation is about 12 players deep. So it's just super nasty with minutes. Bryson Etienne's the guy you would look to if you were to look. I'm not looking.
Don't look. Etienne, he was pretty good. Now, on the other side, Abaji, obviously an alpha. McCormick on the inside. You got Braun and Wilson and Remy Martin, the distributor. What do we do with Kansas, if anything?
It's probably nothing. Agbaji is really hard to play on a normal slate at his price because he's so dependent on his shots. Braun's usage has taken a major hit throughout the latter half of the year. Big Dave does not play consistent minutes. Last three, he has 10 minutes, 13 minutes, 29 minutes, just a ton of volatility there. Jalen Wilson's kind of sneaky, but again, 7K for a blowout. I don't know if I like that. The one guy I have interest in is Remy Martin. He's tough to play here because he's still working his way back from injury. He missed a large stretch of time, and he's seen an upward trend, 12 minutes to 19 minutes to 26 minutes. This is a guy they're trying to get prepped to play 30 plus minutes in the meaningful games later in the tournament. I think he plays a decent amount here, but he's still in load management. I just don't know if this is the game where Kansas decides to unleash him. I think likely he plays his limited role 20 to 25 minutes, and then you see him unleashed later in the tournament. But with 20 to 25 minutes at 4.4K, his usage is excellent. So I think he is maybe one of the pivots you use off one of the South Dakota State players as somebody in that range, if you're looking for a pivot down there.
Do you care? Does it matter to you if Lightfoot is held out?
I think he already is ruled out.
Okay. Well, so that doesn't do enough for McCormick for you?
McCormick, he plays a role for this team. So in a blowout, I don't think he's the guy they'll have on the floor. Previously, we've seen guys like Zach Clements get 10 minutes in some of these blowout situations. So rather than Dave McCormick playing 30, I think you see Dave McCormick at his normal 20, 25, somewhere in there. And then a guy in Zach Clements probably plays more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because they've got other bodies, obviously, and they're not going to be pushed. Kansas is a weird team. I don't know what to do with them. In this game, it's not relevant. That's more of a bracket thing. All right, we've talked about all 16. We're going to take a couple questions because we have a couple minutes here. And then again, there will be content throughout the day, and there's still time because this is just the first day. March Madness package, betting picks, all of that is in the description. Our PrizePicks promo as well. Our friend Slim. Sorry that Oklahoma didn't make the tournament, my friend. But for DK Cash, who's the go-to guard plays? You mentioned Collins. Is there a pay-up guard that you think is worth it, or are you spending most of your money in that front court?
Guard is really easy to get to. The tough position today is forward. We just don't have a ton of value there. I think the best forward value is tape, and then you got to go a ways, probably do an Enrique Freeman before I start feeling comfortable again. I'm trying to spend money at forward, but there is one guard I'm paying up for, and it's Shireman for South Dakota State. really hard to fade him.
Question from Jordan Smith. Kolek or Ziegler?
Ziegler.
Anything just in general, best two values other than Collins? You mentioned Tape. Anyone else?
I think Tape is in play, but honestly, I think the two best values are Zeke Mayo and Charlie Easley. They both play for South Dakota State. I would try to play one of them. You could play both. I maybe would suggest against that, but I do think they're 2 and 3.
Yeah, and also, I mean, also
Remy's good too if you have onions, as Gavin says in the chat.
Yes, Gavin just hopped in. He just mentioned Joe Bryant also. You already talked about that game. That guy's not leaving the floor, even if they get dusted.
Love Joe Bryant.
Baycott and Murray, best spend ups today?
I personally think so. Oscar's the scariest fade on the board, so can't argue with you if you want to play Oscar.
Anything else from you? Just final thoughts on this 16 gamer?
I think there's going to be some game today we don't expect that stays closer than, the spread indicates. I don't know which one it's going to be, but last year we saw that in the Texas Southern game. Texas Southern's on the slate today. I'm not suggesting it's them, but
it's not them. I'm telling you.
For
but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Big tournaments, there is upside if we get some studs that are in a more competitive game than we think.
Well said. Again, 16 games. It's kind of an awkward thing. It's an atypical thing, but we're going to deal with it. Major prize pools for the brackets, for betting, for DFS. We hope you guys enjoyed this. Me and Matt are going to be doing this every morning. So if you like what we're having, you got suggestions, you got questions, at Matt Gajewski, right on the Twitter handle, at JazzRazDFS. Again, good luck with your brackets. Thanks to Mike behind the glass. We're going to turn it over to all the future content from MMA to NHL to NBA. Sir, enjoy the tournament. You have earned it. Great job as always, my friend. Stay tuned for even more college basketball content day in and day out of this tournament. Good luck, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.